Hey, what's up, guys? Back again with another vlog. Oh my gosh, it's finally over. Oh my gosh, it's finally over. It's 1:30 in the morning right now. I'm just glad it's over with, guys. Oh my gosh, that took way too long. Anyway, so day at work is amazing. Super chill, super fun, talking to friends. I'm having a blast, just chilling, and it's an amazing day. I get a response back from my friend, and like he's so nice, and so it was going great, right? It's going amazing. But then there's the looming threat above my head. When I come home, I'm gonna have to do all this fucking work for my physiology course, and I was not prepared for it. Um, Thankfully, I finished everything on time. Like I finished the most important thing, which was finished is a stretch, but I submitted before the deadline, so I submitted something, which is good. It's just an initial draft, so it's not graded or anything, and it doesn't have to be fully complete. But the more you finish, the better your feedback is obviously going to be. So I finished like probably like half of it, and that's being kind to myself. Like I did a lot of research, I got my articles, I typed in as much as I could, I did some audio recordings, and I left like 2 slides empty, and then 1 slide with no audio recording. So 3 without audio recording, 2 of which have no information on them at all. But that's okay because in the instructions it said you technically don't have to like have it be fully finished, just that it's not just like a bland like the default template. As long as you added your own stuff in there, that's fine. Which I definitely did. It took like 4 hours, and I submitted it like a couple like 10 minutes before the posting the deadline. And I made sure that like all my audio recordings in the PowerPoint worked, and that my link was publicly accessible to anyone who clicked it so that they could actually access my slideshow. Um, and that it was through OneDrive, which was a very specific requirement they asked of. So hopefully, and I clicked the link afterwards as well by myself to see if it actually worked, and it did. The audio played and everything, so should be fine. Um, and the topic I chose, like, the problem is that I have not enough, like, I don't know how to describe it. I feel like I've gotten all the information that I could possibly get, and I can't add on anymore. Your presentation is supposed to be 10 to 12 minutes long, but I was able to explain basically everything in like 4.5 minutes. I didn't get to the part about treatments of the disease, so hopefully that'll really add on some time. But like, I talked about all the main stuff in like 4.5 minutes, which is a bit concerning. But maybe that'll give me more time to mess around with the treatment stuff, but I don't know. But thankfully, I got most of it done. So that's good. My topic was about systemic primary I always say carnitine. It's carnitine. Carnitine, not carnitine, carnitine. Every single time I was reading that word, I said carnitine, but it's carnitine. Carnitine deficiency. Um, so that was my topic, and it's about like um, I'm not going to go into it, but it's just like a disease that causes you to be unable to metabolize fatty acids, which causes a lot of issues. Um, and it's very prevalent in infants for some reason. Or not very prevalent, but most commonly seen in infants. Um, so that was my research topic. Um, And then that's not even the worst part. The worst part was the freaking replies to the discussion posts. I am so pissed. Like, the more I read this discussion post, the more pissed off I get. Because it's so darn stupid how it's written that it's not even a question. It's not even a discussion question. Because there's no question. It's a statement. That's what pisses me off the most. It's not even a question, it's a statement. And it's so vague and weirdly written, it pisses me off. I'm so mad. Like, because it's just such a poorly written question. It's so, like, it really grinds my gears. The question is, G protein coupled receptors are the most common class of membrane receptors. That's a statement, okay? Although each receptor may interact with a different ligand, they. Okay, this part really confused me. Although each receptor may interact with a different ligand, they all activate common G proteins. That means every single type of receptor can activate common G proteins. Here's the thing. They don't. They do not. This statement is incorrect. With the way it's written, it's incorrect. It doesn't want you to talk about each type of receptor. It only wants you to talk about G protein coupled receptors. That's the part that annoys me, because every single reply is only talking about G protein coupled receptors, which makes sense, right? Because that's the one in the module that talks about that constantly works with the G protein. It's literally in the name. G protein coupled receptor works with the G protein. It makes sense. But then this statement says, although each receptor, so not just G protein coupled receptors, all the types of receptors can interact with different ligands, whatever, all of the different types of receptors can activate common G proteins. That part I don't understand because it was never mentioned in the module. Like, this is just a piece of information that you have to trust. But I don't, because one of the receptors is a nuclear receptor where it like works with the DNA. And I'm like, how is this working with a G protein? Like, it makes no sense because G protein is like relating to like GTP, ATP, like energy. And I'm like, what does this have to do with DNA transcription? It makes no goddamn sense to me. And it is so confusing of a statement. And here's the worst part. That has nothing to do with the actual question. Because then it goes, given this common pathway involving G proteins, okay, discuss how different cellular effects can be observed in a cell based on ligand binding. Based on ligand binding, why are we talking about G protein? Like, I don't. It's such a weird, it's such a stupidly worded question. It is so infuriating. Like, I'm done with this question. I've spent like 2 hours looking at this stupid question, and I still don't understand it. I still don't freaking understand it. Because all the responses aren't talking about different types of ligands. They're only talking about G protein coupled receptors. Because there's not a single question mark here. There's no question mark. Where is the question? I don't understand. There's no question here. There's not a single question mark on my screen. I don't understand what the question is. And it's so infuriating. And then my stupid response is so far off from what everyone else wrote because I don't understand the question. And I even looked at the discussion, the question board relating to module 4, and there was this one guy who was like, I am struggling to kind of understand the direction to take my discussion post. I feel like the previous topics were quite well defined, but I feel like this one is more vague. I agree with you, Anthony. It is way more vague. And then the freaking the teacher replies is, she literally says, "Hi Anthony, key to," and then adds two spaces instead of one space. "Key to space. This is the last part of the question. How different cellular effects can be observed in a cell based on ligand binding. Hope that helps." It's not a question. I'm legitimately tweaking. This is not a question. There's no question. There's no question mark. There's no question mark. I'm freaking out. I'm so pissed off. There's no question mark. I know the question is, how are different cellular effects observed in a cell based on ligand binding? But it's not written as a question. There's a period at the end. I don't know, it's just a grammar. I'm an English student, whatever. It pisses me off. And this is a science course, whatever. These freaking teachers don't have perfect grammar, whatever. It grinds my gears. It grinds my gears. Because this is worth grades and stuff. So it's like, it pisses me off because in the rubric they're like, okay, make sure your post is concise, easy to follow, logically presents information, language is clear and professional, and uses good scientific language that a peer can understand. Bitch, I don't understand your language. It is not scientific in a way that a peer can understand. I can't understand it, guys. I don't understand what you guys are talking about. This statement that says, although each receptor can interact with may interact with different ligands, that they all activate common G. That's never mentioned in the module. I'm just like, okay, I guess every single receptor that's mentioned in the module can interact with a common G protein. But what was the point of mentioning this if you only want me to talk about G protein coupled receptors? Because what they're trying to get you to talk about is how, or based on Anthony, is how different responses and cascades are triggered in the cell by G protein receptors and their secondary messengers based on different ligands. Right? Something like that. I still don't freaking understand. Because like every other post is like, it talks about different stuff, man. I'm just so confused. It's pissing me off. Like, I'm looking at these and like, they're talking about only the G protein coupled receptor in all these posts. It's just the G protein coupled receptor. And that's what's so annoying to me. Because in the thing, it's talking about different types of receptors, not just G protein coupled receptors. Why are we only talking about G protein coupled receptors? Like, it's that one's. This entire thing just pisses me off. Like, it's what? One, two, it's 3 sentences, 2 of which make no goddamn sense to me, and those are the important ones. The first one is just a statement. G protein receptors are the most common class of membrane receptors. Okay? But that's not the only membrane receptor. There's 5 other membrane receptors that are mentioned in the module. Because then the second statement goes, although each receptor may interact with a different ligand, they all activate common G proteins. Right? So it doesn't matter if it's a different ligand that's activating a different receptor, they can all activate common G proteins. Given this common pathway involving the G proteins and how they can all be activated by all the different receptors, how come different cellular effects can be observed in a cell based on ligand binding. Do you see how weirdly that's written? Am I going crazy? I just hate this question. I just feel like it could have been written in a way more easy to understand way. Because you have to like really twist the interpretation of each word for me to understand it. And like I could go on and on and on about this. I'm just so pissed off right now because like in order for me to reply to some of these posts, I have to actually understand what they're talking about, right? And it just like it took way too long. It took way too long. It took me like an hour, man. Like two hours almost. Like it's so frustrating. The one thing that I could basically gather from all of this is that there's just a billion different type. There's just a lot of different G protein coupled receptors, GPCRs, and that's why there's so many different types of reactions because there's just so many of them. That's basically the only thing I can kind of get from this. Because there's different types of G protein subtypes. Because, oh, and here's the thing as well. All of these posts are talking about the same ligand. Like literally one of the ones that I replied to, the same ligand can activate different GPCRs depending on the cell type. Okay, I understand the part about the cell type, but why are we bringing up the same ligand when in the question it was, how are different cellular effects observed in a cell based on ligand binding? If the question said based on the same type of ligand binding every single time, then I would understand that. But it says based on ligand binding. Based on different types of ligands binding? I don't know. What kind of ligand binding are you talking about? It's not specified. There's so many different types of ligand binding that like you just have to assume they're talking about all the different types. And yet in all these responses, they're comparing different types of G protein coupled receptors based on one ligand that is the same every single time. And I feel like it's just like, you know how broad that is? It's so ridiculously broad. I just brought up how freaking complex GPCRs are and how their responses are because cell signaling pathway in general is a super complex thing. You know, it's not just one receptor talks to one signal, talks to one like second no, like they all talk to each other, you know? It's like one big conversation between a billion different people. It's not just like one thing goes to another thing goes to another thing. It's like they all work together, all the receptors, all the signals, all the ligands, they can all intermingle with each other. So it's like, what's the point in talking about the same ligand when that isn't really like a realistic scenario? You know what I mean? Like, it's just such a stupid hypothetical situation that it makes no goddamn sense to me. You know? Just this whole thing makes no sense to me. It's really pissing me off. Like, I've never been this frustrated before at a discussion post. And the problem is that all these people sound so freaking smart. Like, how do they actually type something coherent to this question? I don't understand. It's like that one's talking about how there's 800 different types of GPCRs. And then they talk about the different types of G proteins that can be activated. The same ligands, such as epinephrine, can bind to different GPCRs. Fuck off. I don't want to hear about this the same ligand. I'm done with this. I'm ending this vlog. Bye.